Lil Romeo was the headline to every avenue of pop culture in the 2000s. From music to movies to voice acting and even fashion, Romeo would be seen as today's TikTok influencer. I remember just how important Lil Romeo was in the 2000s due to either his beef with Lil Bow Wow, who was also a childhood star at the time with similar backgrounds and was pushed as competition in the media atmosphere, or just with his numerous hit tracks like Two Way, which had dominated the airwaves and charts by sampling the hit track It Takes Two that had been released in the 1980s. These tracks would put a spin on the samples, focusing on basketball while having some kid-friendly melodies like what you could find with Kids Bop. Lil Romeo was also the poster child for early 2000s internet. You could go over to a friend's house and typically the computer you would find near the kitchen had at least one track of Lil Romeo that had been taken from LimeWire. You could say that the Lil Romeo trend was a virus like LimeWire, just without the bad side effects of a fried computer. Every bit of pop culture was consumed with how successful this little pop star was. But as time went on, a few name changes happened and a less successful album would hit the market in the late 2000s. Lil Romeo as a brand would fade. What happened to the new wave of 2000s childhood influencers? And is Romeo still a dominating force in the industry? Talking about Lil Romeo and the brand success has been a topic in recent years that many people have discussed. I figured I might shed some light without echoing the same references. It was interesting to see what kind of pop culture icon Lil Romeo was in the 2000s, and if you came from that era like I did, Romeo was put in every bit of media. This childhood star was backed by a major producer in hip-hop culture and was also seen as more of a brilliant movement in today's influencer atmosphere, otherwise known as Master P. It does need to be noted that the two Master P, or Percy Miller, and Lil Romeo, or Romeo Miller, are father and son, and in the early 2000s, Romeo would be pushed under Master's label, No Limits, giving us the pop culture icon that we know today as Lil Romeo. At that time, internet was becoming more accessible and mainstream. This made everyone invested on who Lil Romeo was. You could say that the internet atmosphere at the time helped bring Romeo into fame, but it wasn't just his charm or style that everyone was curious about. With his first hit, My Baby, that would smash charts and radio waves, he would be compared to a more grown version of Kids Bop. This level of success in that hit track would bring forth the next wave in Lil Romeo's career. Lil Romeo would go on to be one of the most successful childhood stars of the 2000s. After his track My Baby, he would go on to release hits like Two Way, which I had on repeat as a kid because it made me feel like I was a part of something bigger for like 4 minutes of my life. Ridiculous, right? This track also saw the same amount of success, and throughout the early 2000s, Romeo would release 3 physical albums that would hit the charts next to artists like Fabulous at the time. But it wasn't just the music that Lil Romeo would be a part of. He had also been very talented in the film industry, leading him to have his own show under Nickelodeon called Romeo, or voice acting in cartoons like All Grown Up, which was a spin-off of Rugrats. This level of fame in childhood stars has been seen throughout the industry for many years. But what made Lil Romeo the hype of the 2000s was the internet and advertising appeal. Also, he had some dang bops, dude. As the late 2000s came around, Lil Romeo was growing old of his image and would rebrand while also taking in a scholarship at USC. While knowledge is power, so would be his journey of putting more focus on learning film and acting, leading to the hardship of his career. Romeo would remain humble in the 2010s, studying film and being a big part of the industry, which was not only movies in general, but also freaking fashion. This led his music career to take a backseat, but realistically, you could already see that the Lil Romeo brand was already fading. In the late 2000s, Romeo Miller would change his brand name a few times over and release a few tracks that were less successful as compared to My Baby. People were just not that invested into Lil Romeo anymore. We grew up and changed. And the person who would grow next to us would be Romeo as well. This growth also led to some interesting social media battles with his father, Master P, either about money or fame, which put some negative light on both Master P and the Lil Romeo brand. You can actually go back in time and see these feuds play out on TV when Romeo was younger, which is just pretty stressful to deal with. As Lil Romeo would fade, Romeo Miller would emerge, and the once successful superstar we had come to love would be a memory of the next industry standard. Lil Romeo as a brand was a dominating force in the 2000s. It is not every day that you see a childhood star become a beacon of light and leave a path of influence with some knowledge. This influence was due to how successful Romeo was as an artist, actor, and legacy. Everywhere you went in the 2000s, you could pick up a poster or a t-shirt with Lil Romeo's face on it. You could bump his latest single in your non-skippable portable CD player that would skip on the sample "It Takes Two, It Takes Two, It Takes Two, It Takes Two, It Takes Two." And while some of his past has a dark turn, you cannot deny that Lil Romeo would be the next wave in current influencers that we have today, like Lil Tay or Bad Baby. People would see how successful Romeo Miller as a person is and Lil Romeo was, and it definitely left a freaking mark for sure. His talents with music and being an actor really made the industry shift on what it should be. The humble approach that Miller would give us was not just seen in recent times. It was gifted under the Lil Romeo brand, influencing kids of the 2000s around the world, including myself.